Okay, guys, this is my first event with everyone here, and we're just going to check out some web design tips and cover some basic layout stuff, maybe some headings, and check out some colors and some resources. So yeah, I'll just dive right into it, and I'll go ahead and share my screen. Okay, uh, so I'm actually working in Adobe XD. I have kind of transitioned to Figma as well, but I still feel a little bit more comfortable in XD, so that's what we're going to use today. And so typically before I start a project, I think this is good to just go over a few key things. Like usually we'll define the goal of the website, make it comfortable to use, have a consistent design, and then the similarity principle as well. It kind of goes for shape, size, and color. And so kind of what that means is anything that looks the same, has the same color or size or shape should be related to each other. And this so that people can have a clear, distinct reference to what is what. And then also I just like to think about the user when creating a site, and then also have it be versatile. And by that I mean scalable. So if you want to create for larger screens or smaller screens like a phone. I've gone ahead and actually just created a file. And this is my desktop board, and I've got a mobile one as well. And sometimes you just start off with wireframing. I don't always do it. It can be useful, and it's also useful in situations where maybe you don't even have content yet, or you need to get a layout nailed down, but it can be very rudimentary. That's a situation where this might come in handy. So basically all I've done here, I've just created a square like so, and then I put 2 lines in it. There and there. So that's what I'm using to sort of represent like a photo or some sort of element on the screen that will take up that space. And it doesn't really matter how you adjust it. I've squished it or whatever, anything's fine. And so here we've got our layout, and a typical screen size for desktop might be 1920 by 1080. And so this line here represents the 1080 cutoff. And then it's got 1920 in width here as well. So my little mock-up here, I've got a little brand, a logo, and some nav items up here. And I've got a double line heading, just meaning it takes up 2 lines. And I find actually when people can almost get lost in the web design, where you're so zoomed out of things when creating that when you are making stuff, you can tend to make things very large. So it can get out of hand, like the heading, it might look small right now, but it's actually pretty huge compared to some headings out there. So this is at 84 pixels. But that's just one thing to think about as well. So a lot of the sites that you might see, you'll start to notice things are in a container, and things are also have a consistent layout across the website, and it's usually based on some type of formula they have. And so what I've got going here is these guides, and these guides are set at 1140 width here, as you can see, as my container to keep all the content inside of this width. and as like maybe a large container or I don't know, some type of container fluid situation. We've only got 20 pixels of padding on each side there. And so usually like it depends on what kind of system or framework you work with or whatever it might be. I'm more familiar with Bootstrap or uh, even like Skeleton or something like that. You can determine what these sizes are going to be. So when you do the design, then you have a little bit of framework to work with. That being said, I'll also pull up my grid. And I just used a little shortcut here in XD, Shift Control Quote, and that will pull up the grid. And I have made a custom grid, and it's 12 columns across. And we'll get into this a little bit more, but you'll notice that inside of my container, I've actually got the relevant width of like 6 across, let's say. So this is 6 in from the very beginning. We're only using the container in. And then this one, I could even change that to be 6 in from the other side. And that's one thing to help you keep your design consistent and keep things organized as well. So I'm just going to turn that off just for now. Sometimes I'll even use like a square like this to represent like a button. And what you might even want to do, this is sort of to represent a typical web page that you might find. And this would be displaying your main feature or your main goal that you would want the user to see as soon as they come to the website. So yeah, and then we've got our call to action, essentially a little bit of descripting going on here, just letting them know what your business is and maybe what you want them to do as soon as they see your site. Okay. Put some more on here. You see a lot of times companies will start off with like a bit of an about section as well. So maybe we'll make that. It's not totally necessary. It's some people have even heard it being called useless before, but I don't know. I kind of like the idea of knowing who it is that you're seeking out on the web, and then you see that about section, and hopefully it's small enough that you can just get a quick overview of it. And so maybe I'll even grab some of these, and I'm just hitting Control Shift here, and you can also grab the Option button. Oops. And drag and click while holding Shift, and that will just duplicate everything you have. And I believe the controls are similar in Figma, which is a free resource that you can download as well. And it works in the browser really well too, so that's a bit of a plus. Okay, so this kind of looks a little janky. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'm just going to select them all here. Let's see if we can do this. And one of the cool features is you can space evenly. So I'm just going to go ahead and hit that. I'll space it out evenly. Maybe there's a few sentences about us here. And you'll notice the grid again. I'm using 6 and 6. So that's just the typical layout you would see across the web. And it's just holding our hero photo there. Cool. Yeah. One thing we could even do is I want to represent that this is 100% vertical height when you go to this page. So it's the fold here, it represents this little dotted line that's cut off. I'm going to go ahead and just change that to like a slightly darker color. Not really worried about color or anything at this stage. You can clearly tell that this section is different from this section. I'm actually going to go ahead and do that again. Here. You'll notice I brought that layer to the front, and the shortcut is Shift and Control, right bracket, and that'll bring everything to the front layer. We want services here. Another classic move you'll see. Of course, you want your services most likely advertised on the homepage. So I have that here. And at this point, maybe I'm starting to think about headings and how they're going to be important on the site. So maybe I want to do a heading hierarchy. Go ahead and move this up here. And to me, heading hierarchy for something that you might see in like a slider or something you might see in a slider. It's probably going to be like an H1, so the most important heading on your website. But it's also probably one of the ones that can get away with being like super huge. You usually can't have huge like headings on interior pages. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to call this one heading 1 homepage, just so I know the sizing of it, 84 pixels for regular. And this is just the default XD font. I don't know, Seago UI or something like that. I don't know how it's pronounced. Anyway, actually, I'm going to go ahead and heading 2. And these are going to be my H2s, which is typically going to be like a section heading. So like some sort of secondary importance that you want to highlight on the page. And 84 might look small now, but maybe we want this one to be more like probably an H2 with a good size would probably be like 30 to 45. Maybe let's go 40. What I'm talking about here, really, a lot of it can depend on content as well, and your strategy and goal on the website. Maybe you want your headings to be super huge. I don't know, but just for typical stuff, I'm just going to set it to 40. So we know our H2s are going to be 40. And I know my H1s on my interior pages probably not going to be 84. Because we're not making an interior page right now. I'm just going to make up a size, but you would want to look into that later when you do make an interior page example. It'll probably be bigger than the H2. So I'll make that like 60 pixels. And yeah, you can see it's kind of trending downwards here. In typical fashion, headings will get smaller as you go down all the way to like an H6. Sometimes you don't even need that many. I'm going to go ahead and make an H3 here as well. Probably want that one to be like 22 pixels. Yeah, as you can see, it's coming along pretty cool here. And one thing we can even do here So I'm going to use these three. And I'll actually just go to marks here. And one kind of cool thing you can do in XD and Figma is you can do character styles. I'm going to over that one. Which one? Two. Three. So that I can go back and adjust these as accordingly, keep that consistency going. Okay. So I think it's kind of cool. I'm sure we'll put this to the back. Shift Control left bracket. We'll put this object all the way to the back, and probably again, I'm just going to make it the same color as the other one, just to define section here. Let's see. Yeah, I'm actually going to just lock this as well, so I don't have to deal with it anymore. Control L, nice. Bring up the grid here. So I want to showcase maybe a photo, like a small description or sentence or something like that, and a call to action in one of these sections here is kind of what I was thinking. So a lot of times what I end up doing is I measure stuff with shapes as well. It's a nice point of reference, and that'll help with your consistency as well. Let's see. Better we got here. It's not too bad for spacing in there. And one thing to also mention too is, depending on what you're working with, the design will probably always be a little bit different than the live build of an actual website. Something will always be slightly off. Could even be by a couple pixels, you know what I mean? But this is more for someone to get the sense of what it's going to look like and showcase those design skills. I've got 3 objects here, and kind of have an idea that I'm going to have a picture in them right here, probably. Call to action probably on the bottom. And then you could do just have a little bit more detail and get rid of those columns. Throw in my button here. And as you can see, as I'm going along here, I can see the centering guides. I'll pop up the X2 brings up there. Sometimes too, like just having some visual for the client could be a big plus. Just show them what ideas are going on in your head, and so they kind of have a visual as well. Something like this could even be something you would share. So I've got my services here. One thing to mention too is I've only got 3 across. I find 3 to be a pretty good number for something like this. 4 is also quite good. 5 gets a little bit squished. I was just going to show you this repeat grid option here. It's kind of cool. Check this out. Yeah, it's kind of a more advanced feature in XD, but something to play around with. I won't get too into it, but Yeah, you can create repeating fields basically. Pretty cool. Anyway, let's go back to where 3 and 4th here just so we can see what it looks like. We'll group those together, and I'm just going to essentially. It's kind of cool if we kept the same width and height of these elements here, but we probably want to keep them inside the container. So yeah, see what's going to happen here is they're starting to be a little bit big. So I'm actually going to go ahead and I'm using pretty Zoom right now. I don't know if I can how much time we have left. Try to get through as quick as possible. Yeah. Okay, here's what's going on here. Could have just used my ones I had with, but it's okay. Check that out. I want a little bit more room elements. We're sacrificing width here. Although you can make it taller. So 4, if you want to keep them in a container that's similar width as this, then that might be a good option. 4 across. 3 across also works very well in this situation. Okay, enough about the wireframing. I'm going to jump actually right into the second demo, which where we introduce a little bit of color. And color, I find, isn't, you don't have to focus so much on learning color theory so much as maybe just do a little bit of research into what color represents. And so I've just brought up a little bit of color screen here and just some keywords that might be represented by that color. In this situation, we're actually going to use yellow and black with white as well. So those were kind of joy, optimism. I thought it was kind of fresh, elegant, and pure. So I actually went on Adobe Color and I found a color palette that I liked that was yellow and black. And then white, we just added in there as well. And I'll show you in the demo. We've got our headings, our colors I've laid out here. Bonus feature. Here's how to make the perfect button. Check this one out. Start off with square. Put your text in there. That's 15, that's fine. I'll make it like 17 point. Something like that. Just move the one we have below. You're gonna want to group this together. And there's an option right here to select padding. So my ideal button, buttons that I'm comfortable with seeing across the web anyway, typically range with 12, 13 padding on top, 30 on the sides, and 30 there as well. 13. You might even want to boost this to 35. There's that padding. 13 and 35. No problem. So now we've got our perfect button. We can round it. And if you want to add some color, it looks something like this. So I've created a dog demo. And this is Dogs of the World. We've got our logo, some menu items up top. click the button, main image we want to showcase. And this is telling people, this is Dogs of the World. You want to learn more? You click right here. Next section, about us. This guy doesn't look very impressed. But that's just a nice and easy to follow layout. We got a couple of paragraphs, a heading, and an image. Here's our types of dogs. Similar to the services we just created with the wireframe. Here's our image. And if you want to learn more about that breed, you can check that out as well. And one cool thing is with a layout like this, it can easily be turned in or implemented in with like a slider or something like that. So then you just have your arrows on each side. Clients or users can just keep scrolling and see how many types of dogs there are. No problem. This is something I would call a large call to action. Maybe they're interested, they want to be interested in more dogs. They should probably book a discovery session with us. So what do you want them to do once they reach the end of the site? You probably want them to meet with you or contact you in some way. So here we go. And this actually just was a coincidence. I found a picture of this pug and the background color was like the same yellow that I picked out earlier in Adobe fonts. I thought that was pretty cool. And then our footer, we've got a logo, a small description about the company, quick links, contact, connect with us. Just for the sake of the demo, I just have the same menu items here, but here maybe you would want to even want to put like Facebook, Instagram, stuff like that, and then contact. You'd probably have your contact form or like an email or phone number under there. It's the same spacing and similar layout to what we had before in the wireframe. We're working with the exact same requirements here, and I think it's pretty cool. Got a couple more things for you. This is just an example of like, I think this is similar to like Bootstrap. So one way you could set up like their grid. It's just showing that it's got 12 across here. You could do 3 columns, which is worth 4, 4, and 4. Or you could do the classic 4 and 8, 6 and 6, and 12 all the way across. Yeah. So actually, I was going to talk about this a little bit later, but now that we're here, again, I was just using the just the font that came with XD. Then I started messing around with more fonts. And I'm like, well, they have a lot of rounded elements. And this kind of goes back to the similarity principle where, okay, you want to keep things consistent and you want to make them similar to each other to reference what relates to what. And so that's a good example here. I've got the sections split up. You know these are all together because they're all shaped the same. They have the same colors. It's the same layout. This is separated with a white background as well. And so I went off a little bit there, but back to the font. I think I used that classic Montserrat font here. You maybe want to make that like semi bold. But you'll notice that this font in particular just has more rounded elements. And that's one thing to think about when you're designing stuff is what font are you going to use with your project? What fits in? And I've got a couple of resources that I'll display after this demo. And a lot of it is just browsing stuff you like on the net and and trying out different things. You know, I knew that this one had some random elements on it. It was just kind of a coincidence that I stumbled upon it while making this. But I'm like, wow, actually it worked quite well compared to what I had before. I think it just matches a lot better. And that's one thing you might want to think about is your headings matching the website. Just getting that vibe going and creating that aesthetic. Pretty great here. I just want to point out the footer for a second. We're using multiple columns down in this footer. And it might not space exactly the same as how like Bootstrap might do it, but it is spaced out evenly. Yeah, I've got all these group. We've got all these sections grouped together as well. And I've just spaced them out evenly right now, apparently. Just using this distribute horizontally function here in XD. So yeah, not too bad. I think we could probably manually adjust it. I think it looked a little better before. Yeah, but either way, you could probably adjust the margin and padding on your actual site. Play around with the widths and stuff like that and look a little bit better. I think, yeah, for layouts and stuff like that, it's a pretty good base point just to start playing around with just the simple ones. This is a 6 and 6, being image takes up half, and the content takes up another half of the page. Yeah. Let's see what else I got here. Grab this. Yes, I guess the dogs would be 4, 4, and 4. We've got 3 across. And just they all have to equal up to 12 just to make that grid work. Just grab this one. So for example, 1, 8. Instead, there's that. 8 and 4. Dog really doesn't need to be like that big. Maybe we had a lot more content. And 8 and 4 might look closer to something like this, where your content has a lot more room to play around with here. And the picture really doesn't need to be that big. So you can stretch out your content a little bit more. Let's just check out that field here. Put it somewhere up there. And also, make sure it's vertically centered within your section. I don't have this document quite set up to measure that. So I'm just going to make a shape. Grab this, I'm going to group it. I'm going to click on the shape, and then let's align middle vertically. And that ensures that this section is vertically aligned with the space around it. Let's preview that one. No problem. I think this turned out pretty rad, eh? So yeah, I don't know, having something like that or too low is kind of getting weird, right? Just doesn't look right. So you need something that's visually appealing too. So, before we get into the resources, I will just do a quick mobile demo and we'll wrap things up. And this kind of speaks more towards the versatile thing I was talking about earlier. I'm just going to copy this entire section. Let's get this one here. I think I'm working with like this is like an iPhone 12 or it's like 11 screen size. I can't quite remember. But regardless, I think people will get the idea that it's just a phone screen. It's 360. Okay. 360. Background. That's a little bit. Button to resize that. That's one thing. Is yeah, you can make text depending on screen size. You can have it, change size smaller as the screen goes down, or like have like a minimum or maximum size of that font. But the buttons should probably stay the same on mobile and desktop. I find that even on mobile, it's better to have the same size button on all across the board. All right, so we're still in that container. Just move that font size down a little bit. Actually, get rid of that one. We only have to go down a couple notches. And one thing relating to spacing is if it's in the same section, I find that it's relevant to that section. You really only want maybe like 30 pixels to 40 pixels away from the next element. So I'm just going to make a shape here. Let's go 30 pixels. Okay, so this is we're at 28. So I'm just going to dump it up. It's because we have some sort of line height issue going on here, but ideally, want to be something like around there. It's roughly 30 space between 30 here as well. Now, if you want to give some section a little bit of separation from the next, then that's where you would add a little bit more space. Depending on what you're doing, you'd probably add some margin or padding. That, yeah, right there, actually, I would probably go 50 point. You could even do 60. And I think that's plenty for the most part. Like this section even seems a little bit wide. I mean, it's probably a little bit case dependent too. Kind of, yeah, it really depends on what you're working on, but give you that. Keep it at 50. Lock that. Section. Not bad. And we'll have to keep in mind too that this prototyping little preview here displays a little bit different than what a regular monitor would. Honestly, it's you'll notice that you're missing space on either side, and this content will Might even display a little bit bigger on a regular website, and you'll notice that spacing even more. So that's just something to keep in mind, honestly, is just relative spacing. Reminds me, this was a little bit small. You probably want it rounded taller than this one because we have a lot of rounded elements. So this entire thing is like only 40 point height. So put that up. Toggle logo. I think XD messed with the size of the body. Yeah, so 18 point. That's one thing I never mentioned before. Usually I'll even lay out my body text too. And you don't really want to go bigger than 18 point. That 18 point is already getting to that point. But and I wouldn't go any lower than 15 for body text. I think that 16 to 17 is the sweet spot for body text. Oh, but you might say, wait, we're missing the image. Oh yeah, maybe we want to implement that too. Well, I thought we had it set up before. We're going to have to do a little bit of troubleshooting here. Lock this so it's not messing with us. Let's see. It's definitely going to have to be a lot smaller. I'm going to group this section together because we've already spaced it out. That might even work well. Just stack. Not at all. Depends on how crazy we want to go, but I guess. But we should keep above the fold. So that picture should be a little bit smaller. Because we want all of our important information to be shown as soon as the user pops up in their phone. Check that out. I think that looks pretty rad. Yeah, but you might say, okay, well, this is left align. Okay, well, see how that looks. Still not too bad. I didn't mind it either way. Yeah. Okay, well, that was kind of my quick demo on layout, color, and making like a basic web page using those features. You probably want to take a look at some of these resources if you're interested in doing more of this stuff. For inspiration, I usually go to awards.com. I find awards, all of those websites are almost too much. No real client is going to want a design or something developed the way that those guys make websites. Although it does get things moving in your mind. I love going on there. It is probably my favorite site for inspiration and web. But everything on there may not be realistic. So another website I love, go check out web design stuff on is Dribble, 3ds.com. There's a ton of color sites on there for picking out your color palette. It's super easy. Color.adobe.com is where I grab my colors from. Fonts, we've got fontjoy.com, which I'll show you. Font Share, it's kind of like just a free font sharing website you can download. And a lot of them are variable fonts too, which is pretty cool. And Google Fonts, classic. Free photos on splash.com. And FontJoy, I'll show you real quick. It creates font pairings for you. So we've got our main heading, primary, we've got a secondary heading here, and then our body text. And you can just flip through them and generate whichever one new fancy, two, and I'll give you the names right here. Some of them are okay. That one's kind of weird. This one's cool. Cool. And yeah, Adobe Color, Words, Dribble. That's it. You guys have any questions or anything like that? Feel free to message me. We'll wrap this up. Thanks.